Breaking news for your home. Wayday is here. It's Wayfair's big sale, where you can score the best deals in home, like up to 80% off with free shipping on everything. Plus surprise flash deals all Wayday long. You won't find better deals for your home anywhere else. We're talking furniture, decor, rugs, and more, all at Wayfair, and all up to 80% off during Wayday. So don't wait. Shop Wayfair's Wayday now through April 27th to score the best deals in home.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
There's a reason why these stories about Michael Phelps keep getting told. Phelps and Bob Bowman built a mental rehearsal process that was far more detailed than just picture yourself winning. He didn't just visualize gold. He visualized disruption. He visualized the muddy middle. Anything can throw you off from it. So when the problem arrived, he didn't have to become someone new in that moment. He had already met that version of himself. He recognized this.
Welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom, where we share pearls of wisdom shared by some of the world's top entrepreneurs, leaders, and difference makers. Here's your host, Govind Jayaraman.
Hi, I'm Govind Jayaraman, and this is Paper Napkin Wisdom, episode 360 and number 35 in the Edge of the Napkin series. So if you've been with me for a while, you know what the series is about. This is where I step back from the conversations with guests, from the 1,000+ napkins I've collected, from the stories, from the insights, and from the patterns, and I try to make sense of what actually changes things. Not in theory, but in real life. And in today, there's an idea that sits right at the center of something I see over and over again with proven entrepreneurs. People who've really built something. People who are respected and capable and experienced, and quietly, something can feel off. Not broken, off. And that's usually because the version of you that built the last chapter isn't the version that's being asked to build the next one. And here's where it gets interesting. That old version still works. Nothing wrong with it. Still produces, it still gets results. It's just not your face anymore. So what do you do with that? That's what today's conversation is about. We're going to talk about focus, but not the way you've heard it before, not about his discipline, not about his intensity, not about locking in on a goal and grinding your way there. What we're going to talk about is focus as something much deeper, as rehearsal, as identity, as playing the entire movie of the life you want, not just the ending part. Because most people don't struggle with effort. They struggle with recognition. They don't recognize the moment they've been working toward because it doesn't look the way they'd pictured it. And that's where everything starts to wobble a little bit. So in this conversation, I'm going to walk you through a different way of thinking about focus using examples from some of the most famous elite performers that exist, Michael Phelps and Summer McIntosh, but bringing it all back to what actually matters for us as leaders, as entrepreneurs, as someone who's navigating a real transition and growth, what it means to stop leading from who you were and start becoming who you're already turning into. So as you listen to this one, try thinking about this. What part of your life are you still trying to control because you haven't rehearsed who you need to be without that control? Let's dive in. There's a strange moment that happens in later chapters. Outside, things still work. The business still works. The room still responds to the version of me that built all of this. And yet something feels late, and it's not the results. It's me. I can feel myself arriving behind my own life. I can feel that the person who built the last chapter still knows how to perform where I am now, still knows the tone, still knows the speed, still knows how to carry the room and do the things, but the performance and truth are no longer the same thing. A mask can still work long after it stops being my face. And that's where I want to begin today. Not with strategy, not with ambition, not even with execution, but with that moment, that quiet recognition that the old version of me is still effective and no longer sufficient for what I want next. So this conversation today is not really about visualization. It's not about positive thinking. It's not about seeing the finish line and hoping really, really hard that you can make it happen. It's about something deeper. It's about what focus really means when the chapter has changed and our identity hasn't really fully caught up. Because a lot of proven entrepreneurs know how to drive. We know how to grind. We know how to carry pressure, more pressure than most people ever experience. We know how to get a result out of hard stuff, out of a hard season. But that's not the question anymore. The question is, what am I rehearsing? Am I rehearsing the future I say I want, or am I still rehearsing the self that got me here? And that's a different question, a sharper one, because my brain is always listening. It's always building around whatever I repeat. If I keep on repeating the old way of surviving, leading, proving, controlling, rescuing, superheroing, forcing, carrying, then I shouldn't really be surprised when that is the version of me that shows up under pressure. And that's the hidden problem as we prove ourselves as leaders and entrepreneurs. The old idea still produces. It just doesn't produce the next chapter. The mask still works, but it's just not my face anymore. So the question under this whole conversation today, this whole episode, is really simple. When I say I need more focus, what do I really mean? Do I really mean more effort? Or do I mean that I need to rehearse a version of myself that I have not fully learned how to trust yet? And that belief comes before evidence. So most people think that focus is locking into an outcome, the number, the podium, the goal, the deal, the speech, the closing date, the celebration, the clean proof that it all worked. The version of focus is popular because it's powerful. It's really visual, and it gives us a shot of certainty. It makes the future feel clean. It makes ambition feel vivid, and it turns desire into a picture. But the problem is that picture is incomplete. A lot of people are not focused. They attached themselves to an ending, but the ending is just one frame in the movie. Life is not one frame. Life is a sequence. It's a movie. It's got texture. It's got delay. Misread the signal, unexpected emotion, fatigue on a Tuesday, a conversation that lands badly the first time, silence where we expected applause, a win that arrives wearing clothes that we didn't recognize. And that's where the common version breaks. It teaches people the outcome and it skips the middle part. It trains them to worship arrival and resent the process, or even maybe not recognize it. It gives us a highlight reel, and then life hands us a movie. And because we never rehearsed the whole thing, the middle feels like failure. It feels like mud. A proven entrepreneur is especially vulnerable to this. Proven leaders fall to this not because we're weak, but because we've often built a real life through force, through competence, unbelievable skill and mastery, urgency, or just outright sheer determination and will. And that creates a dangerous illusion. It makes the old self feel universally useful. It makes the old tools feel permanent, reliable. It makes a person think, I just need to focus harder. I just need to hammer harder. And the answer is no. Sometimes I don't need harder focus. I need truer focus. Sometimes the issue is not intensity. It is that I'm still staring at a future picture with an old identity. And that old identity can only imagine the future in terms it already understands. And that's why people hit milestones and still feel off, a little disoriented. That's why some leaders get what they asked for and still can't land inside it. That's why some founders grow a company and lose themselves in that motion. They visualized an outcome and didn't rehearse the becoming. So Here's a powerful reframe. Focus is not staring harder at the result. Focus is playing the whole movie of who I must become to hold that result well. And that's different. The whole movie, of course, includes endings, but it also includes the sequence that reveals whether I'm ready for that ending. It includes the pressure, it includes the mistake, the awkwardness, the boredom, the waiting, the internal chatter, the moments where the old self tries to get back into the driver's seat. And that's what makes focus part of the activation framework instead of just a motivational slogan. The activation framework is focus, align, act. Focus isn't just what I want. Focus is who I am becoming. And that matters because for proven leaders in transition, we're not usually facing a business problem. We're facing a personal problem, an identity problem, a self problem. Externally, a lot looks great, but internally, something's off, maybe foggy and hard to name. And that's exactly that today's edge of the napkin prompt really is about. And it's about why this conversation can't just be about visualization. It has to go inward before it goes outward. So the deeper truth is that focus helps me stop leading from who I was. It helps us rehearse who we're already turning into. And that's why this matters so much. Because if we don't constantly play the new movie, we will unconsciously keep performing the old one. And that old one still may look strong. It still may earn respect. It still may get results and it still may fill rooms. But it will keep pulling us back into a chapter that's already behind us. So focus is not a productivity tool here. It's an identity bridge, a way of narrowing the gap between what we say we want next and the self that can actually carry it without distortion. And that's where align and act also start to matter, because focus names the movie, plays the movie, and align accepts the frame that we are in. Act gives me a movie and gives us the action behind it, but focus has to come first, because I don't act my way into a new chapter accidentally. I rehearse it. So there's a story about Michael Phelps that I love, and there's a reason why these stories about Michael Phelps keep getting told, not because it's dramatic, because it's really detailed and precise. Phelps and Bob Bowman built a mental rehearsal process that was far more detailed than just picture yourself winning. Bowman has described it as a videotape that Phelps ran in his head again and again and again. Phelps has also described visualizing best case and worst case scenarios, including broken rhythm, bad starts, goggles filling with water. In Beijing in 2008, his goggles did fill up with water, and he kept swimming by counting strokes because he had already rehearsed the exact possibility. And this is the part that I care about. He didn't just visualize gold. He visualized disruption. He visualized the muddy middle. He visualized the version of the race that would absolutely terrify and derail someone who only rehearsed the ending, because anything can throw you off from it. So when the problem arrived, he didn't have to become someone new in that moment. He had already met that version of himself. He recognized the scene. That is focus. It's not fantasy. It's recognition, not a clean picture. It's a full sequence. Summer McIntosh, the great Canadian swimmer, gives the modern version of the same principle. Around Paris 2024, she spoke about handling pressure by staying inside of the swim in front of her. After Paris, she kept pressing into capacity, building more and more. And at the 2025 Canadian trials, she broke 3 world records while talking openly about continuing to test what she could handle. After a later result that she didn't want, that didn't work out, she spoke absolutely bluntly about hating to lose and about using that feeling as fuel. That's not romance with winning. It's a relationship with the whole movie, not with the podium. And that's why both of these stories are important in this edge of the napkin. Phelps shows the power of rehearsing disruption, and Summer McIntosh shows the discipline of carrying expectation without being consumed by it. Together, they point at something much bigger than athletics or sport. They show that elite performance is not built by just picturing the celebration alone. It's by rehearsing the reality. And that matters a great deal for any entrepreneurs and leaders whose next chapter is asking for a different self. So here's the mechanism. I'm going to break it down in focus, align, act. So first, focus. I want to spend some real time here because focus gets flattened too easily. People hear focus and people think target, and target matters. Of course it does. I'm not pretending that outcome is irrelevant, but outcome without identity is very thin. It creates urgency without structure. It creates desire without depth. It creates motion without inner readiness. So when I say focus, I mean probably at least four things. First, I mean name what I want. Focus on what you want. And that's the obvious part. Second, I mean name who I must become to hold it. And that's the part most people skip. It's the harder part. Third, I mean rehearse the full sequence, not just the final still movie. Think about it being 15, 20, 30 minutes of the movie that plays out leading up to the result. Fourth, I mean let my nervous system feel and get familiar with the emotional weather of the path, the anticipation, the competition or the performance, the doing, the being, the turmoil, and then ultimately the realization of the result. That's a different level of focus. And let's make that a little more practical. If I say I want a bigger company, that's not enough. The old self can want a bigger company for old reasons: control, validation, proving, fear, revenge, running, compensation. That's not focus. That's desire wearing old identity. Focus asks harder questions, like what kind of leader does that company require? What kind of presence does that growth require? What part of me can't come with me from this current form? So what part of me can't come into this? What am I still doing that belongs to the chapter that got me here? What is the movie of the next chapter actually asking from me? And that's where focus starts to become a bridge, because now I'm not just staring at growth or a goal on a wall. I'm rehearsing congruence with growth. I'm rehearsing the version of me that doesn't have to distort the opportunity to survive it, that doesn't make it luck. It makes it opportunity. And this matters a lot for later stage leaders and entrepreneurs because the old self is often built in a chapter of proving, early hustle, scarcity, grinding, outworking, carrying too much, saving things personally with the cape, operating in urgency that so often, urgency starts to feel like competence. That identity can build something very real, of course. I know that firsthand, but a later chapter tends to ask for different capacities. It asks for confidence, for calm, for congruence, for contribution, for discernment, for early truth, more internal steadiness, more ability to let other people matter, to ensure that other people matter, more ability to let systems carry what personality used to carry, more ability to be present enough to stop over-interpreting every hard scene as being some kind of vindication or accusation. And that's why focus can't just be about goals. It has to be about rehearsing the self who can live inside the new chapter without dragging the old fight out into every room. So when Michael Phelps ran the whole race in his head, he wasn't just seeing the finish line, he was building familiarity. And that's what the proven leader needs to do too. Familiarity with the next self, familiarity with a slower conversation, familiarity with not forcing the room, familiarity with being misunderstood briefly and staying steady anyway. Familiarity with letting the new chapter arrive before it feels comfortable. Familiarity with belief before evidence. That is focus. Playing the whole movie means I include the inner part where I'm not yet fluent in who I am becoming. I include the part where my old self still tries to help. I include the part where people around me still expect the former version. I include the part of me where the new chapter feels quieter and for a while less dramatic. And all of that matters because a lot of the old identities are addicted to drama. Drama feels safe. It feels like life. Noise feels like importance. Chaos feels like competence. And focus breaks that spell. It lets me rehearse another way. Align. Once the movie is named, I still have to stand in the frame of who I actually am right now. And that is align. And align is where a lot of people get impatient. They want the movie to replace the current scene. It doesn't work that way. The current scene still exists. The misfire still happened. The delay is still real. The team tension is still in the room. The silence still exists. The fatigue still lives in the body. Alignment means I stop arguing with the fact that this is the scene I am in right now. That's not passive. It's access. Because when I fight the scene, I lose myself inside it. When I respect the scene, I can work with it. So align is self-acceptance and mental hygiene while respecting the present moment. That's exactly right for this moment because every leader and entrepreneur is not usually suffering from a lack of effort. We're suffering from a misalignment between the self we keep on performing and the self that the next chapter is asking for. Mental hygiene matters here. What sentence have I been repeating to myself that's leaking energy? What interpretation have I promoted to truth? What perception do I think is real, but it's just my projector? What part of the old movie is still running in the background? Have I been calling old fear drive? Have I been calling self-attack discipline? Have I been calling control leadership? That's the work of Align. Because focus can still become fantasy if Align doesn't keep it honest. I may know the movie I want to live, but I cannot tell the truth about the current frame. If I can't live in that current frame, I will keep contaminating the next chapter with old material. So that's where this transformation promise sharpens. The mask still works, but this is what makes this hard. If the mask had stopped working, the problem would be obvious. The problem is that it still earns applause, it gains outcomes, it convinces people, it still produces, it sells, it creates revenue, it creates profit. So Align has to include a hard admission. Effective isn't always true, productive isn't always aligned, and respected isn't always free. Sometimes the old identity is still working beautifully in public while quietly costing me in private. Alignment begins where I stop calling that success. So there could be a little bit of letting go in Align. I don't think that gets talked about enough. When a chapter ends internally before it ends externally, there can be a letting go. That can be even sad, confusing. The old self may have done remarkable work, may have protected a lot. It may have built just about everything that we stand on. So this is not about contempt for the old identity. It's about accuracy. It's about gratitude. It's about love and clarity that it can't lead forever. And that is alignment. Standing in the current frame with enough self-respect, self-love, self-admiration, self-acceptance to stop pretending that the old movie is still the whole story. And then comes act. And this is where people usually want the big answer. The dramatic move, the defining choice, the visible leap, the standing ovation, and sometimes those things matter. Most of the time, the next chapter enters through smaller doors, though. Act is not theater, it is evidence. Small, consistent, visible behavior that proves that the new movie is not just emotionally interesting or intriguing, it is underway. Focus rehearses the next act. the next self. Act lets the self touch the ground, and that might mean I say the hard thing earlier. That might mean that I ask for support before resentment builds. It might mean that I let someone else hold a problem which I would have once grabbed before. It might mean that I slow down a response instead of winning the next moment, instead of and losing the relationship altogether. It might mean that I leave a little white space in a day that the old identity would have felt with emergency. And it might mean that I stop using pressure as proof that I care. And this is why act has to be visible, because the body trusts what it can see repeated. If I keep waiting to feel fully ready, I will keep giving the old identity extra time to continue to assert itself. If I act in small, clear ways that match the new movie, I build evidence. Evidence matters, not motivational evidence, behavioral evidence, proof that I'm not only thinking new thoughts, proof that I'm not only admiring the next chapter, proof that I'm not only talking about the new identity in rooms where it sounds good and makes me feel big, proof that I'm actually giving it shape. And that's also where release matters. Act is not force. Act and release belong together, because if I take the next true action, then I stop trying to bully reality into paying me on my preferred timeline. And this is really hard for established, accomplished entrepreneurs and leaders. A lot of us built our lives by controlling variables early. We learn to move before others. We learn to anticipate. We learn to tighten and carry. That skill doesn't disappear easily. Survival. But the next chapter often asks for a cleaner action and less gripping. And this is why act is really the final part of the engine. Not because it matters the least, well, because without focus and align, action becomes contaminated. It becomes old identity with better branding. And that's not what this conversation is about. This conversation is for a proven leader who can feel that the old self is still driving too much of the day. Act is how I begin to hand the wheel to the future version of myself. So I want to connect this back to magnetic leadership because it finally and naturally fits here. Confidence changes when I've played the whole movie. Now my confidence is not built with smooth conditions. It's built with familiarity with disruption, and that makes my feedback cleaner. I don't need the room to cooperate in order for me to tell the truth. And congruence changes too, because if I'm rehearsing the next self and acting in a visible way that matches it, my words and my behavior begin to line up again. And that strengthens accountability. I stop making promises from one identity and living from another. Calm becomes much more available. Not because the pressure disappears, because I'm less surprised by the sequence. Because I've included difficulty in the movie. It tells me support other people without rushing to fix or dominate the moment. Contribution obviously deepens too, because when I'm no longer fighting the chapter change internally, I can see people for who they really are again. I can encourage without needing them to stabilize me. I don't need something back. I can be with the person, not just with the metric or the outcome or the result. And that matters because leadership is a field and not a position. The inner state shapes the outer impact. And each pillar, confidence, congruence, calm, and contribution, has a natural behavior through feedback, accountability, support, and encouragement. So this is not a separate framework. It's the same work seen from another angle. Focuses teaches me to play the whole movie. Align keeps me honest inside the current scene. Act gives me identity evidence by performing the action. And the result is not just better performance, it's clearer leadership, cleaner leadership. It's less distortion in the field, less old noise in the room, less mask and more face. I know this one from the inside. There have been so many seasons where I was very clear on what I wanted and not nearly as clear on who I needed to become to receive it. I could see the outcome. I could speak it. I could build toward it. I could work my butt off harder than anyone else around me toward it. I could persuade others around it. And that life would hand me in the middle a delay, a hard email, an odd silence, a conversation that didn't land the first, second, or third time, room where I could feel myself reaching for an older tone because it used to work way faster. And that was the giveaway. Not that I had lost direction, but that I had not rehearsed the full movie deeply enough. I had admired the future and not familiarized myself with the person it required me to be. And that cost me. Not always publicly, though it did cost me publicly. But sometimes the cost was really private. Internal tightness, a faster tone at home, a little more control, a little more pressure in my own head than the moment required. For some people, that's sleepless nights and the hidden price of an old identity. For me, it was lost weight. It was gained weight. Not only does it distort the business, but it distorts the body. It distorts our presence. And presence matters to me. It matters in leadership. It matters in love. It matters in how a room feels before words even start. And there's entirely another side to this. I know what it feels like when I play the whole movie more truthfully, when I've included the awkward part, when I've included the delay, when I've included being briefly misunderstood, when I've included that the old self trying to take over and the new self choosing not to panic about that. And then something changes. I get quieter inside, not passive, but available to the moment, available to discernment, available to people, available to the truth of what this scene of the movie actually needs. And that's a better place to lead from. It's one of the clearest signs that focus is doing its real work. So here are 5 key takeaways from this conversation. Focus is identity rehearsal, not outcome obsession. Write down one result you want. Then write down the version of you who could carry it without distortion. Name the traits, name the tone, name the cost. Play the movie, write the whole scene. Second takeaway, the old mask often still works. That's why chapter change is hard. Identify one behavior that still gets results but feels like it belongs to a former version of you. Stop calling it harmless. Let it go. It's okay to feel bad about that, too. Playing the whole movie includes disruption. Mentally rehearse one important conversation or event this week, including the part where it goes sideways and you stay steady anyway. Align means telling the truth about the current frame, the current body. Finish this sentence in writing. The scene I'm actually in right now is. Then don't decorate it. Just tell it straight and love it just the way it is. Act is visible proof of the new chapter. So choose one small behavior that belongs to the next self and repeat it daily for 7 days. Let repetition become evidence. Release the outcome. So I keep coming back to that image, that idea that Michael Phelps had of water in the goggles and still swimming. Not because the race stayed perfect, but because the scene had already lived somewhere deeper than panic. I think a lot of proven entrepreneurs and leaders are in a version of that now. The chapter has changed. The old self can still finish the race, maybe even win it. But there's still something in the body that you know that this is not the face anymore. So maybe the question is not whether or not I can make this old identity still work in the circumstance. Maybe the better question is this: what would happen if I stopped rehearsing the self that got me here and started playing the whole movie of the one who's already trying to emerge? So if this one worked for you, I hope you share it. And I hope when you do, you tag it with paper napkin wisdom. Because ideas small enough to fit on a napkin are often large enough to change your world. Make it a great day.
Warning, the following ZipRecruiter radio spot you are about to hear is going to be filled with F words.
When you're hiring, we at ZipRecruiter know you can feel frustrated, forlorn even, like your efforts are futile, and you can spend a fortune trying to find fabulous people, only to get flooded with candidates who are just Fine. Fortunately, ZipRecruiter figured out how to fix all that. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/zip. With ZipRecruiter, you can forget your frustrations because we find the right people for your roles fast, which is our absolute favorite F word. In fact, 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day.
Fantastic.
So, whether you need to hire 4, 40, or 400 people, get ready to meet first-rate talent. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/zip to try ZipRecruiter for free. Don't forget, that's ZipRecruiter.com/zip. Finally, that's ZipRecruiter.com/zip.